Hey guys, welcome back to another video. My name is Peyton and today I will be dyeing yarn for the very first time. And so I have a spread already written out for the 4 different tests I'm going to do. I'm going to do a test with black beans, a test with blackberries, a test with dip dyeing yarn into purple food coloring, and then a test where I just put the yarn in purple food coloring without dipping it in. And so I already have my yarn soaking in some water so that it'll be ready to accept the dye or the mordant. I'm going to be mordanting my yarn with alum powder and possibly cream of tartar. I haven't really decided if I'm going to do that yet. I have 2 pots right here. I think the first test I'm going to do is going to be with the food coloring. Since that one will take a little bit less time, I'm going to use white vinegar to mordant the yarn so that it'll accept the color. And so yeah, let me show you the setup I currently have and what I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be using black beans and the blackberries, and then here's my alum powder right here. And everything I'm using today is food safe, which is a really good thing if you're doing it in the kitchen. I've got my icing food coloring right here. It's violet and it's Wilton's brand food coloring. And then I got some white vinegar right here. And then here are all of my skeins soaking in water. I have zip ties as the tie to keep everything together. And I just put them in some warm plain tap water. I have a scale and some measuring cups and measuring spoons. And then my journal to write everything down in. And then here are the pots I will be using. So I just put 4 cups of water in each pot. And so now I am about to add about a tablespoon of white vinegar into each pot. And this will just get the help the yarn absorb the color and let the color stick to the yarn. Alright, so I just got the vinegar in there, and I'm going to turn each burner on to medium low. And I really just want to bring up the water to a nice simmer. And then once it's been simmering, I will add my food coloring and let that simmer for another couple minutes. And then I'm gonna do my yarn. I think in this pot I'm gonna do the dipping, and then in that pot right there I'm gonna do just putting it in the water. So yeah, I'm gonna let that come up to a simmer and then I'll be back. Alright, so I'm now gonna dissolve a quarter of a teaspoon of my icing dye in 1/4 a cup of water. I'm gonna put some gloves on so that I don't get any staining on my hands. I'm just gonna scoop out about a quarter of a teaspoon and then mix it in. I'm gonna go rinse these off real quick and then stir them a little bit more. Alright, so these are now nice and stirred up. Alright, so my water is almost at a simmer. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my color in. And I'm just gonna do one skein at a time so that I can make sure that I'm able to pay attention. So now I'm adding my color into my pot. Going to add just a little bit more water, probably another 1/4 cup of water in here so that I can get the rest of the dye out. Alrighty, I'm gonna go rinse this out. So I have my first mini skein right here. And my goal for this is to get some color breaking. And so I'm just gonna go super slow. Just dip the very bottoms in. And I am using 4 grams of yarn. And it's a silk, alpaca, camel, and cashmere blend. And I'm kind of doing this experiment so that I can see what method I want to dye the yarn that I'm going to make a hat out of. I'm not gonna probably get a ton of breaking because there's so little yarn in here. But I just want to see what I can get. This is my first time ever dyeing yarn, so I'm just kind of playing around. So I'm starting to see some blue going up into the fibers a little bit. I'm going to turn my heat down just a little bit. Nice color gradient going on. A little bit darker at the bottoms. The water is starting to look nice and blue. There's definitely still a lot of red in there, which is kind of what I'm trying to soak up first, but when I lift it up, the water's more of a blue tinge than a purple. Alright, so not expecting a huge color gradient. I'm gonna go ahead and almost put it all in there. Alright, so I'm going to put that in there and add another tablespoon of white vinegar. And then I'm going to stir that up very gently. Alright, so now I'm going to let that sit for a little bit. I think for about 10 minutes. So now that I have that pot soaking, I'm going to get started with this one. And with this one, I'm just going to put the yarn fiber in there. I'm going to turn the heat off. And I'm going to go ahead and just add another tablespoon now of vinegar. So I got that added. And stir it in. Water is nice and warm. So I think I'm going to add my yarn with this one first. And then I will add the dye. So I got my yarn in there. So now I'm adding my dye in there. And I'm going to put a little bit more water in here just to make sure that I get all the dye dissolved. So I went ahead and did another 1/4 cup like I did the last time. So now I'm going to add that in there. I'm going to go rinse this out real quick. And then I'm just going to very gently get all of that incorporated. And I think I actually may see some more breaking in here than the dip dyed one, just by the way that it's looking to me already. So I'm going to go ahead now and set another timer for 10 minutes. Take a little peek at this one real quick. It's definitely lightening up in the water. So I am going to go set that timer now. So it's been 10 minutes on this pot and I'm still seeing quite a bit of color in there. I'm not quite sure how much more it's going to absorb. So I'm planning on adding another 1/2 tablespoon of white vinegar. And then I guess I'm going to let it sit for another 10 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Don't want to do that much. Glad I caught myself. That was a whole tablespoon, not a 1/2 of a tablespoon. I have my half tablespoon here. I have to get different spoons. And then I'm gonna mix that in. Echo, set a timer for 10 minutes.
10 minutes, starting now.
So I have another timer set for 10 minutes, and then I will come back and check it when that is done. My other pot right there has a few minutes left, and I will update you when that timer goes off. The timer for my normal pot just went off. This was the pot that I just placed the skein in first and then added the dye in. So I'm gonna go ahead and add another half tablespoon of white vinegar into this pot like I did the other pot, and then let that sit for another 10 minutes as well. We'll call that about a half a tablespoon. I'm gonna mix, make sure I'm using the right one. So I'm gonna mix this up a little bit. And then set another timer for 10 minutes for this pot. And then I'll show you the other one once the second 10 minutes for that pot is up. The second 10 minutes are up, and so the pot doesn't look like there's been much more color absorbed, so I'm gonna go ahead and take it out, and then if it's cool enough, I'll rinse it out. If it's not, I'll let it sit for a little bit longer and then rinse it out. So I'm going to go get some gloves on so I don't dye my fingers. Got some small tongs here, and I'm going to go ahead and grab it. Squeeze out some water. It's still a little warm. It's a really, really pretty purple color. And I do definitely see some breaking, and it is a little bit more blue at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the counter and let it cool off a little bit more. And our next pot is going to be ready in just a couple of minutes. So my second pot is nice and ready. It's been another 10 minutes for this pot. So each pot got 20 minutes each and 2.5 tablespoons of white vinegar. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this yarn out and then set it aside so that it can cool off as well. It's a nice, pretty, dark purple. It's not looking a ton different than my other skein. But it'll definitely be interesting to see how they both look once they dry. So here's this color as well. So now I'm gonna let these cool off a little bit more. I'm going to dump out both of the pots and wash them out really well. And then by the time I'm done with that, the yarn should be cool enough to rinse out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I'll be back. I'm very happy with how this has come out so far. I'm loving the tones in it, and I'm loving that it's not all one tone. Fill this up one last time because I think it's gonna be clear. And now the water is looking pretty clear, so I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze out as much liquid as I can get out. So this is what we're working with so far. It's a beautiful purple color. So I'm gonna go and hang this up in my bathtub, and I'll be back to rinse out the other skein of yarn that I've dyed with the food coloring. Alright, so it looks like this one is all nice and rinsed out. I'm gonna do the same, as squeezing as much as I can get out of it. And it's looking really, really pretty as well. So I'm going to go hang this on the right side of my bathtub, and then it'll be time to start with the natural dyes.